All right. Hello, everybody. I'm going to give it a few moments here just to let some people join. So excited to be joining you guys today for our second live of the week. So we're really excited because this is an opportunity now we have to showcase some of our in-house experts. We have an incredible roster of amazing individuals who work so hard to provide all of our animals and the animals in the community with world-class veterinary care, enrichment, and attention. So if you guys like these lives, definitely comment below because we would love to be able to do these more regularly if it's something you guys want to see more of. Today, we're going to be greeting the wonderful Melissa Shupak. She is our division manager of shelter programs here at Toronto Humane Society. And we've got a series of questions lined up to ask Melissa, from her professional background and role to what it's like to be a trainer, to how we work with some of the dogs who might need a little bit more TLC. Some of the dogs, cats, and special species for that matter. While we're getting started here, guys, definitely start thinking of some questions because there will be a Q&A session at the end where Melissa will get to engage with all of you guys. So definitely start thinking of some questions that you have as we discuss today. We're also going to get to see some furry friends, which I know everybody loves. So definitely stick around if you are interested in any of the animals and go to our website for more information on any of the animals that we show you guys today. So we'll give it a minute or so here, and then we'll dive in and introduce Melissa. It looks like we've got a puppy lined up, which is exciting. Again, guys, just be mindful that this is live, but if you've missed it, it will live on our Facebook page as well as our YouTube channel for later viewing and sharing. So we can share the wonderful information that Melissa is going to share with us with a wider and greater audience. So we've got 22 people on now, so I think we should be good to introduce Melissa. So I'm going to toss her up to the screen now. And there we go. Hey, Melissa, how's it going?
Hey, Hannah. Good. How are you?
Good, good. So excited to have you on, and thank you for making time for us today. Okay. I know you've got a little animal in the back, so I'm sure people are going to be curious about who that is, but who do you have with you right now?
I have Kermit.
Kermit.
I don't know. Maybe he's coming right to the.
Ah.
Hi.
Hey, Bubba. Aw. So Kermit.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, okay, guys. So Kermit is on the website. So if you want more information about him, he is available for adoption. So head on over to the website torontohumanesociety.com to find out more about little Kermit. All right, so let's get started here. So first question, and I'm going to turn off my camera in a moment here, is what makes Toronto Humane Society's shelter training department like no other? Oh, I think it's just me. Oh, sorry.
So I would have to say that it first and foremost would be our trainers. So we're really lucky as an organization to have the team that we do. So we've got we have certified trainers, which I'll get a bit more into later, as well as training assistants that they work alongside the plans that our certified trainers have created. We also have our training assistants in feline, so they're a bit more focused on our special cats. And then we have some working knowledge and some of our training assistants that are starting to expand into special species, so we can start working and identifying areas to help and improve those guys as well. So we do, as I said, have certified trainers, which we are proud to have and promote for their recognized designations. So we have those that are certified through the Council of Professional Dog Trainers, through the Care and Prior Academy, through the International Association of Animal Behaviorists as well. But then I think also we're extremely lucky that our Director of Behavior, Dr. Ellis, has there's a lot of bees today. I think they like my liver treats. And she is one of the few in Ontario who's a certified applied animal behaviorist. So she is such an asset to our team, on our staff, and just such a great resource for us, but also for other organizations as well. There's a lot of collaboration between our department and other organizations to sort of share. It's definitely an area where knowledge is everything, and sharing different techniques that work in our shelter environment or in other shelter environments, and being able to share and spread that knowledge. So I would have to say, first, it's our trainers that make us like no other, because we're just so lucky to have the trainers that we do. They're so dedicated and they care so much about the animals that they are working with here to help get them to the point where they can move into their forever homes. Secondly, I would say, sort of from an operational standpoint, our case management approaches, the way that we work our cases, we are looking at it from a science-based training approach with our plans. We look at management. We look at our behavior modification. We are regularly monitoring, looking for any progress or regression and changes in their plans for each individual animal. So we might have broad sort of guidelines or protocols that we follow for certain cases, but it doesn't always work for the same thing. Works for one dog that doesn't for another, or a cat, and it's being creative with those and working so collaboratively as a team. And then we have another little thing that we do here at the shelter. We do notice that sometimes when these dogs or cats or special species do have some sort of behavioral challenge, that there can be a barrier to adoption. And the narrative or the conversation that happens when people come in with these cases can maybe turn people off or be overwhelming or a bit intimidating. So we like to categorize these guys as TLC animals. And within that, we have a level system. So we built in sort of what care requirement goes into that case from a level 1 to a level 4, and sort of gauge how much time each type of case. Again, it's a bit more broad and everyone's a little bit different, but we group them into that. And then it helps us evaluate our capacity for quality care when we're looking at bringing other more challenging animals in. Do we have the space and resources, manpower to work the plans that we need to support them and get them to where they need to be? And yeah, that's sort of, I would say those are some key points that make us like no other.
That's awesome, Melissa. Now, you touched a little bit on TLC, so tentative love and care. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means and how we approach our TLC animals?
Yeah, for sure. So as I mentioned before, sometimes the conversations around these guys can be a little bit intimidating. And we noticed sort of a trend of, if we were positioning this dog has this problem, that a lot of people are just kind of like, oh, okay, maybe not right for me. I'll sort of switch to a different one, and that these guys weren't maybe getting talked about or interested in as often as some of our more emotionally sound dogs. And we decided to change the narrative of the conversation, and by talking to identifying them as TLC as opposed to a behavior case, takes the onus off of the animal having a problem and more what we need to do to support that animal through. So within our organization, the TLC status or designation just is a recognition that the trainers are working with them and that they need just a little bit extra support than maybe your average dog in the shelter or average cat or bunny or whatever the case may be. And then we can sort of pivot that conversation at our adoption team with our adopters or our foster parents, and sort of just talk about and highlight that and change that conversation of this is what we do to help alleviate those stressors or things that are going on with them that might be contributing to the unwanted behavior that we are seeing.
That's amazing. And Melissa, can you talk just really quickly about, for those who are adopting a TLC animal, what kind of ongoing support they may get post-adoption?
Yeah, for sure. So if anyone tuned in on Tuesday, you would have listened to Bev, our colleague over with our public training services. And her team sort of tags in once an adoption goes through. But with a TLC adoption, the adopters and new pet parents receive 4 free training sessions with a one-on-one with one of our certified trainers who work in that public service. That helps us transition from the shelter or from the foster home into their new home and give that support needed without sort of the maybe concerns around the financial aspects of working with a trainer, although THS is so reasonably priced. And yeah, just sort of a nice incentive for people to kind of work through the plans along with someone. A couple of our trainers in the public were shelter trainers before, so they have a good understanding and have experience in the shelter to then put that into, real life practice and plans that the owners can do. But before they even get to that point, some of these cases, we do sort of take some special approaches to the adoption process. So we might do a couple of meet and greets, or you might do a session where you talk to a trainer beforehand, before taking it home, being able to have that Q&A of, this is my concern, this is my reservation, this is my setup, this is my plan, and kind of get that initial part done. We call it a speak to trainer portion where you're getting that bit of attention, making sure you feel confident and comfortable bringing that animal home to sort of meet their needs until you can then set up that appointment, which is usually a pretty quick turnaround if you're on the booking system through the THS website.
That's awesome. Now, Melissa, tell us a little bit about the system that we have in place for these TLC animals. As we know, some of the dogs are reactive, but being in a shelter environment, there's dogs around all the time. So how can you speak to the way that we're able to manage the stress that they might be facing, as well as the safety element to make sure that all dogs are looked after?
Yeah, so if we're talking dogs, but although this does kind of go across all species, we do use a color code system just for any animal in our care on our what we call our enrichment list. So any of our handlers, whether it's volunteers, our trainers, our veterinary staff that are handling them, I can't remember if I said volunteers, but volunteers too, that they have an idea, they have a specific training for that color code, and they know what they would be getting into. So some of our dogs that are dog reactive, if we're going with that example, are one of our higher levels. So our staff, our handlers and volunteers move through a system where they kind of build up and add more and more training, management, and toolbox tips into their toolbox until they can reach that highest level and just sort of gain that. A lot of the stuff we try and implement sometimes is management. So we consider where the animals are housed in the shelter. So if we're talking about dogs and they are dog reactive, usually we'll try and position them in one of the housing areas that is ideally quiet, has a visual barrier, low traffic, so that there's less of an opportunity for them to get, frustrated, over aroused, stressed, scared, or anything like that. And we also sometimes work very closely with our medical team. So it's really something great that we get to do here is work collaboratively as a team. So we're addressing the cases sort of holistically, seeing if there's any physical or we have a new dog, physical or emotional sort of underlying issue going on. And sometimes we do use short or long-term medication at the discretion of the attending vet to help sort of get those animals to a baseline or place where they're comfortable, where we can start to implement and do some of that learning and teach them those skills.
Well, I've got to interrupt you now, Melissa, because we have a new furry friend.
Yes.
Can you just quickly tell the viewers who we have and where they can find more information about him?
So this is Josh, or Joshua, if we go by his full name. Beautiful little lab mix over there. And he is also all over my little stash of liver treats here.
He's so beautiful. What a friendly guy you are, Josh.
Yeah.
And Josh, if I'm not mistaken, is one of our TLC animals as well, guys. So one of the perks of adopting beautiful Josh here is that you will get those 4 free post-adoption training sessions with our wonderful training team. Speaking of our wonderful training team, can you tell us a little bit about what a day in their life looks like when they're not bringing animals on Facebook Lives?
Yeah, I should do a shout out to Kyla. She's one of our certified trainers. You may see her in and around the back bringing us these dogs. So yeah, a day in the life of a shelter trainer at THS varies. Some days it's always busy. It's always, you come in with a plan and there's always the opportunity that something changes, but sort of an overview of what their core stuff that they are doing is the hands-on training sessions or behavior modification sessions with the animals that have been identified to need that. They are reviewing the case. So usually it starts off with a behavior assessment. So an animal is flagged for us to identify that, whether that's by our own observations, another person within the organization has identified something to put on our radar. We'll do an assessment. But assessments are sort of just one snapshot in that time. So we like to take a case approach of sort of continually monitoring. So there is an admin aspect of the job of, keeping the files up to date, doing the typing of those assessments so that when our adoption team is working with potential pet parents, they're able to give them, accurate and helpful information, and then modifying their plans as needed. In addition, they also do some support with our community-based sheltering division, which is working with our foster parents. So we are very lucky to have such wonderful foster parents who are willing to help work and address some of these behaviors in a home environment. So we have to recognize that the shelter is abnormal. So sometimes the behaviors we're dealing with or trying to alleviate in the shelter aren't present in a home. Sometimes they are. So it just helps us get a better sort of evaluation, picture of what that animal could look like in a home environment, and start working those plans. And the trainers work one-on-one. Sometimes, with COVID, it's been virtual or over the phone. Whatever the foster parent is sort of comfortable with, we're happy to work with them. And then in certain cases, when things are done with this pandemic, we would go back to doing that sort of support in person as needed for the dogs. But for the cats, we've been great to adapt to using virtual training because it lets us see that environment or our special species. So that's some of the stuff that they do there. They also do training with our staff and volunteers. So that sort of level system through of identifying sort of the hands-on training that's needed to work with that animal. Our training assistants do that. We've also worked, like I said, collaboratively with our shelter veterinary care team. So sometimes that might be, like I said, talking about medication or assisting with procedures, whether that's exams, trying to take a fear-free, low-stress approach, or sometimes it's actually treating the animal. So sometimes some of our animals that have sort of fear and are kind of cliquey and only like particular people and don't maybe eat in front of strangers or things like that, then the trainers might treat those animals to just make sure that they're getting all of their sort of base needs done there as well. And sort of those other things that come up as needed with supporting our shelter programs, like adoptions. So like those speak to trainers, helping out with the meet and greets and the introductions, answering any questions that people might have about these cases. We do those speak to trainers, like I said, for our TLC animals, but we also do it for our puppies and kittens because we feel like it's a really good opportunity for us to be proactive with these cases because we know how important socialization is, and, start encouraging people, to look for a certified trainer, reputable training schools and work with them. Or now that we have our robust public training services, being able to, guide them to the services that we offer so that they're setting their puppy up or kitten up for success for the rest of their lives. So that's sort of like a overview snapshot of all the stuff that they may experience. Oh no, I lied. I forgot about admissions. So that's somewhere where our shelter trainers work as well. When we get a profile for someone looking to relinquish their pet and there's any sort of red flags or indicators for us that this animal may end up on our radar, we want to make sure, like I referenced before, that we have the capacity to support that case and work with it. But we also take that opportunity as sort of like a secondary approach from our pet support network to just offer training advice, route them to our public training services, or offer them some management tips and tricks that might help alleviate, if the reason for surrender was more behavioral, that there are these options and there's this, we can do it, which is what our great pet parent support network does as well. But it's just that secondary live talk to kind of just really see if there's any way we can keep that human animal bond and aid in that pet retention and keep that animal in the home. So they're kind of areas that they spend their days.
Awesome. And another question, Melissa, is you kind of touched on it, but what are the types of supports that we offer the community? So as we know, we are more than a shelter. We obviously care for homeless animals, but we also have services available for owned animals. So how do we facilitate supporting pets and pet parents in the community?
So sort of, yeah, as you said, I kind of brushed on these topics, but ways that we can support our community members, whether they're within our organization or are just reaching out to us. So if they're just reaching out to us, it's providing them sort of that immediate support that they might need for their animal. So if they have identified that there is, some concerns between a resident dog and a cat, we've got info sheets that our trainers have created that kind of outline the approach for them to just set them up and then work alongside one of our public trainers to carry through that plan and keep that, relationship development going. We work with our foster parents, as I said. So those are usually one-on-one, more frequent. I mean, it depends on the case, but usually they're pretty regular conversations until the animals get to a point where we feel like they're doing really well and they don't need as much of our support. But that helps our foster pools just sort of expand. So we love our foster parents that take on these more complex things and are just eager to learn and grow from the education we're kind of giving them. And then they take those skills and use it for the next foster that they have, or they take that opportunity to educate other people in their lives about the case they're working with, or just other training tips. I know some of our adoption agents love that too. Some of their highlights of their day are just teaching an adoption agent something new. So I think that's something that we really strive to do. Sometimes people get into the sheltering or animal industry thinking like, I don't like people, I just want to work with animals, but that's not the case. Here, let alone the public or the community that we're trying to support and work through. We also have a team of people. Like I said, our trainers are always collaborative with their cases and getting feedback or input on how to sort of take an approach on the case they're working with. But it's a lot of being, comfortable and willing to engage and talk to the community and educate them, in understanding terms of an industry that's not really well regulated for training. We are really strong advocates for certification and the importance of it. But that sort of high level of knowledge that we might have, or that sort of background knowledge, it's important that we have the skills to talk to our members of our community and make it sort of understanding for them, and being able to digest that and put that out and into the world. So that's where our sort of trainers can step in and do that to potential adopters. So sometimes we talk to people and then they make the choice that that's not the right home for them, but they've been able to take hopefully some really good, valuable information and consider that, even if they are taking a different case, might not be from our organization, but from another agency, and being able to apply some of that, or knowing that they can come and reach back out to THS for our training services. Just a lot of advocating and sort of educating the community with as support where we can, whether that's, needing our services or coming in to relinquish an animal. And then through the care process, if they aren't actually in the building, and then to the point into their new home. And then that's where our lovely public trainers take in once that post-adoption support can happen.
That's super, super awesome, Melissa. And speaking from, I work at Toronto Humane Society, but I'm also a foster parent who most recently had a TLC dog and had the opportunity to work with one of our trainers on a weekly basis. I can truly say that it was a standout experience. And just having that relationship with the trainer it made my whole week. So we would meet every Friday and have our call and discuss everything wrong. No, just kidding. He was perfect. Every quirk that Mr. Boss had. And I can agree wholeheartedly. It made the experience completely different to have that support. So for anyone listening who is a foster parent, who is a public member, do know that if you have a home, you have the opportunity to provide an animal with your home, that you will get that support and you don't go at it alone, and that you have our ongoing attention throughout the foster period. Just wanted to add that in as a testimony to what you are saying. So now you mentioned certifications. So our trainers are all certified. Can you touch a little bit more on why it's so important to find a certified trainer? You talked a little bit about there's lacking regulation in the industry, and then what certifications all of our trainers have.
Yeah, for sure. So it isn't a regulated industry. There are a lot of people who can say, that they are trainers, and there are different methods of training that people can implement. So we take a scienced, sort of evidence-based approach to our training, and our designations or certifications that the trainers on our team have, or some of our training assistants are working towards, are from international recognized, groups that are working to get that message out and support that, going as low stress, fear-free, least invasive, minimally aversive techniques, using positive reinforcement, and things like that. Because we have to look at it when people are reaching out or seeking behavioral support, it usually means that the animal is in, a vulnerable state. And we want to, or maybe like vulnerable or compromised. There's something going on that needs to be addressed. And we want to make sure that, the steps that we're taking are going to help improve and address that sort of underlying concern and get them to an emotional state where they're feeling more confident, comfortable, secure in their environments. And sometimes if you use the wrong approach, you can impact that animal's well-being or their welfare. And then, at the very worst, you could make the behavior worse for some of the sort of techniques that are maybe a bit more outdated, can have some adverse effects, and sometimes make the behaviors worse. I always like to think of things like, I've had cases here that I've worked alongside of where you really are building a relationship, you're working together. It's a collaborative effort between you and the dog or the cat. You build that trust. And there are circumstances sometimes where you have to, you withdraw from the trust account. If I have to take a animal who is really uncomfortable at the vets, but they need to, that's daily care that's required. Sorry, I'm distracted. Hello. Then, oh my God, I totally lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Yes. So, then you sort of make a withdrawal from that bank account to work with them and get them, feeling better and more secure in that environment, have that trust and approach, But again, it's the most important thing is that, she found the stash. Is that evidence-based approach and advocating and informing people of that, and sort of the outdated approaches that, have a worsening effect on that human-animal bond and that animal's welfare, and things like that. So we really love that the trainers that we have are certified, and advocating those same sort of best practice approaches that we as an organization feel really strongly about, but also for that same reason that then we are putting that education out there for other people as well, to know and to have access to and answer questions, help sort of share the tips and tricks that we love to use, and things like that. So We do have a couple different types of certification that some of our trainers hold. So we have some that are certified through the Council of Professional Dog Trainers. We have some through the Karen Pryor Academy and through the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants. And there's there's difference between trainers and behavior consultants, and sort of different roles that they can take or implement. And as I said, our director of behavior is a certified applied animal behaviorist. So, that we're surrounded by such great resources to continue to educate. And I feel like such an important part of certification is that you are required to continue your education. So you work towards credits, and you continue that as part of your certification. So you are always staying most informed in those approaches that are, recognized as the best practiced standard approaches that we should be doing.
That's amazing. And it's so important, as you said, because it's so important that you know where you're going and you're taking your animal is a reliable organization with evidence-based science to back up the training protocols. I think we have a new dog. I just wanted to quickly draw attention to. Who do we have now, Melissa? That's
Susan.
Oh,
sweet Susan. Hi. She's one of my favorites, but don't tell the others. She's such a sweet girl. She's one of those ones that I was saying can be a little bit cliquey. She just likes her certain people. But sometimes really all it is just taking her leash and taking her for a walk. And then she usually finds that you're not so bad. She did have, she was heartworm positive. So she went through treatment for that. And she has some, reactivity towards strangers or dogs selectively. But she is the best. Like, just you can cuddle her and just love her and smush her face, and she's the best. And I should have highlighted other ones like that too, because Joshua is amazing. Kermit, they're all great. They're all great.
We all have our favorites. And Susan is available for adoption on the website, guys. So check out her bio for more information. You can also check out the process. It's all virtual right now. If you have a loving home for Susan. Now, Melissa, a few other questions for you. If somebody is looking to get involved and become a trainer, how can they get started to achieve that goal?
Oh, yeah. That's a great question. So anyone that is interested, I would say, getting your hands wet and into the industry to see if it is something that you like. So I'll focus sort of at THS, as I sort of mentioned before, anyone that, volunteers or works with us goes through some pretty rigorous training to interact with our animals. We sort of have that hands-on training, but we also do a lot of module theory-based training to sort of, again, push that message of learning theory and why we take the certain approaches that we do, and work through that. And that, in addition, they can also learn just basic husbandry and other sort of important factors that when you are looking for your certification, those are things that come into consideration as well. There are things that you're studying and looking at that you kind of get some real life exposure to and access to as a member of the Toronto Humane Society sort of community. But, there are other ways to sort of get your feet wet. You could reach out to other dog training schools and see if they have any sort of volunteer or apprenticeships. We have a new sort of position of a volunteer training assistant. We've started in our cats. It's amazing. Those people are so dedicated, and they come in and they help our employed training assistants to work through those behavior modification plans that we have set. And they went through some rigorous sort of additional training than just sort of our other staff and volunteers would. And we're hoping to start to implement that in for our dogs and special species. So keep an eye out for if you're interested in that type of position. And yeah, I can sort of speak to my own personal experience, which is I actually went to school for child and youth work. I was one of those kids who, as soon as I could drop math or science, I did. And I didn't really have the forethought, beyond that. And so I kind of just stuck with kids, even though I've always, I think at some point, every child is like, I'm going to be a vet, and has that, drive or connection to animals. And like I said, I kind of didn't really get into the math and sciences of it too much in sort of the typical school setting. So I went this other way. I loved working with kids. There's a lot of skills that are, crossover if you're working with kids or you're working with animals. And then I made a switch, and I did go to school. I went to Sheridan and for their animal care program, and sort of wanted to figure out what I could do with animals, like what options are there, and that program helped me, and it got me some exposure. But I just fell in love with sheltering, and have been working through that, and been really lucky to get employed here at THS as an animal care worker. Then I sort of fell in love with our TLC, or more complex animals, while I was here, and really got so interested in the training and behavior behind it. So I would go home and do some courses, or do some reading and figure out more and more about it. And then I was able to move through and become a training assistant. Then I got my certification as a certified trainer. Then I was the assistant manager of our training department before I stepped into this new role as our division manager of shelter programs. So that was sort of my journey through it, of, just experiencing it, finding out what it was. But there are a lot of great courses or sort of intro things that people could look at, similar to the ones that I had already referenced. But I had started with Karen Pryor Academy. They had a few sort of intro type courses that weren't relatively expensive. They were relatively inexpensive. And then the IAABC as well has some courses or things that people could look at, as well as some, you can become a supporting member there, which is fantastic. And then you have access to so many resources and forums with other people within that organization. And then I learned a lot from my colleagues. I still learn from them every day, and people within that. So it's really, it is sort of a starting point where you're kind of self-teaching depending on what direction of the certification you're going. Karen Pryor Academy does have, sort of course-based and hands-on through, and sort of move through with a group of other people attaining their certification, where some of the other ones are a bit more independent and self-taught. So it's really depends on your learning style. But I would encourage people, if they're interested, to look at those sort of ones that we've referenced before of their websites, and see what options of how to join or get involved with them. That's sort of, there are staff here that I talk to regularly who have that sort of same thing, where they're like, this is really interesting. I'm really like learning about the behavior and all of that, and learning theory and all the plans. So I feel like I share the same information. I'm like, this is what I did and I loved it. But I think it does, takes a lot of hard work. There's a lot of studying that goes into it, looking at everything. And like I said, you gotta be a bit of a people person, as well as, the animals. And at the shelter, one of my favorite things at the shelter, was those those breakthroughs that you have with the dog. So they are either really don't like you at their kennel, or they're struggling through something. But when you have those breakthroughs with them, and you see that progress, whether it's like a huge breakthrough or just like a mini milestone, like those are the things that make the job so rewarding, whether you're doing that here at the shelter, or you're having those moments with an owned animal and their pet parent and working that through. I think those are really important qualities of someone who's interested in becoming a trainer, to just really be passionate about not only the animal's progress, but the person side of the leash, or wand toy, or whatever is happening for the different species.
That's so wonderful, Melissa, and warms my heart. Those breakthrough moments, I think, makes it worth it for a lot of people. And so having that passion is something that will take you a long way in the animal welfare industry, for sure. Another question pertaining to the discussion of certification is, when people are looking for a trainer, how can they find a good trainer? What are some qualities to look for? Maybe what are some things to avoid that aren't necessarily evidence-based? And how can people start that process?
That's a great question. So if you're going onto Google or whatever sort of search platform you're using, typing in certified dog trainer or certified trainer or a behavior consultant, those are some of the words that you're going to be looking for. And then you're going to want to look at, if anyone is advertising as any of those things, what organization are they affiliated with? And then looking into that organization, seeing, are those the sort of principles and methods that they're using something that you are comfortable and support and use? So, are they more positive reinforcement based? Are they using a more punishment based approach? Are they balanced, which is sort of a term that's used where you use a little bit of both, and finding which one works best for you, which in our preaching would be the positive reinforcement or certified route that are using those scientific based approaches, and taking it from that sort of big picture step of, we look at the environment, the setup, if there's any medical contributors to what might be going on, and start that training intervention with positive reinforcement. There are also some websites too, like I think, like I said, kind of the ones that I've listed, Karen Pryor or the Certification Council of Professional Dog Trainers, IAABC. Fear Free also has certification. You can add sort of an addition if you're through one of the other ones that I've mentioned, that you can get a Fear Free animal trainer. Those websites too also find a trainer near me, and you can plug it in and see and be able to look at who's in your area and what they're doing. But I think that's the most important part of that sort of research going into it. If people are recognizing that they are affiliated with something, looking into what that they're affiliated with, and make sure it's something that you feel comfortable or aligned with to be able to work and have that partnership, because it would be very difficult for you to be working with someone who was, doing techniques that you weren't comfortable implementing. Then you guys are just going to have conflict or struggle to try and get your pet to the point where, it's manageable or livable for you. And at the end of the day, that's the goal, is there might be things, I have the worst trained dog, but I love her and she just does whatever she wants. So I always tell people to practice what I preach, not, do as I say, not as I do. But it all depends, because, there are certain things that don't bother me that might bother other people. And so it's all targeted to what you're looking for. So making sure that they also offer what is going to address your problem behavior and work through what you feel as the issue, because there might be things that I look at where, if you came to me and I was like, okay, I want to work on, the barking, but you're like, well, I'm more concerned about the counter surfing. And I was like, oh no, we're going to focus on this, and we're going to do it this way. Then, you're not going to have that good sort of relationship and work together, and feel excited and happy to work the plans that are being sort of outlined to you. So I think that's also a really important consideration. It's just clear sort of guidelines of what you feel is important and when you want to work with, and, making sure that trainer is helping you get to that point.
Wonderful. And it speaks a little too about how to be a good and effective trainer, you also have to have the people skills as well. So you can set clear goals and achieve them. This is all such valuable information, Melissa. I think we're at a good point here, guys, to flip it to the Q&A. So let's just start at the top here. The first one comes from Grace Lindsay, and she asks, what does free post-adoption support mean on animals' profiles on the website?
Perfect. So that's exactly what we were sort of talking about before, of that free TLC post-adoption. So that means in addition to your adoption fee, you have 4 one-on-one consultations that are covered for you and your pet. So that just helps us make sure that we're there supporting you through the transition of either from shelter or foster into your home, and making sure that you're not feeling sort of out there, and you're with someone who has, access to the animals file when they were within our care and understanding of what point they were at, and they're kind of just tagging in and working through to set you guys up beyond that.
Sorry, trying to get on there. All right, good stuff. So next question comes from Alex Mack, and he asks, what types of animals do you normally work with and train? Do you train cats?
So personally, I was always focused, and I am certified as a dog trainer. But when I became the assistant manager of training, I got to dive into some of the other areas. So our cats are our special species. So we train cats. We work with cats. So some of it is, trick training, which if you look at our website, if you're an owner of a cat and you look at our website and look at the feline classes that we have, there's one-on-one to sort of identify the problem solving and then behavior modification. But then there's also trick training and other fun things that you can do. And Shannon is amazing. She's fantastic, and she would be such a great asset to look at for that. And then our amazing team of feline trainers on site are doing those depending on the cat's needs. Sometimes it is, target training, which is, can be a fun sort of activity, but can be essential in sort of managing or working with them. And then they're also working more, typically we find a lot of shy or under social cats in the shelter environment. As I said, it's really atypical. We are lucky to have the space that we do, and we have a lot of out of cage space. So sort of opportunity for a bit more of a real life setting. It also allows us to co-house the cats. Sometimes they do better with that sort of companionship, even if they aren't, designated to go together. They're just that social companion while they're in this environment. So yeah, we definitely have trainers that are working with our cats every day.
So cool, because you don't think typically that you can train a cat, but there's so much that you can do. All right, next question we have here is from Sarah Pejik. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing the last name correctly. And she says, why is shelter enrichment so important for the animals?
So it's something that we as an organization really feel strongly about and have some pretty great initiatives that happen within our daily care here at the shelter. So enrichment is kind of like an umbrella term. There's a lot of things that could be considered enrichment. Sometimes we set certain things up in their environment. Sometimes it's the way that we feed them. Sometimes it's that human-animal interaction and the training and the walks and play groups or that social companionship in co-housing. So it really, it just depends on the animal's needs of what they are enjoying, what they like, and providing them. A lot of the time it's providing them mental stimulation, things that will improve their quality of life while they're in our care, and give them opportunities to practice a lot of their normal behaviors. So a shout out to Jackie, our director of behavior, who was able to implement scratching posts in all of our enclosures. So even in, we've had more space in and out of cage housing, but worked alongside our procurement team to be able to source and find ones where we can put that in the shelter or in the cage for those cats as well. So they can have that, our cages or out of cage space have, elevated levels so the cats can move around. We have hiding spots for it. We put crates in some of the dogs' enclosures so that they have that, sort of safe space to be. They have toys, they have frozen Kongs, they have puzzle feeders. And then, like I said, that human-animal interaction that we do. So it's not always just a walk. Sometimes we do reading at run. We used to have this, again, before COVID, we had our reading buddies program, which was always a hit, I think, for the kids to come in. And it had such a benefit because, that auditory enrichment for the dogs to just be sitting next to someone who's just hanging out and reading, and to help the kids really gain their confidence in reading out loud in sort of a no stress, the dog's not going to judge you if you mispronounced a word setting. And visual. Sometimes we have volunteers who will put videos up on their iPads or iPhones or things like that, and you get that sort of stimulation that way for the animals. So there's a lot of things that we implement and encourage all of the, members of our teams to look at, to provide. And it's just to improve their well-being while they're in our care in this sort of abnormal, stressful, noisy, smelly, there's a lot of scents of other species around, and make it as enjoyable as possible.
Thank you, Melissa. I see Maple poking in the back there. If you want to give her we've got the time, might as well give her a little shout out. Maple is an 8-year-old TLC dog that we have, guys. So I'm going to let Melissa chat a little bit about it.
This is Sweet Maple. So she came into our care. Come here. So she is such a sweet little girl. So she's sort of an interesting case. She's sometimes reactive on leash towards other dogs as sort of one of her areas that we're working with. But she also had some ongoing skin issues. So she requires some baths and ear medication. And one of the things that our training team was working alongside the medical team was to alleviate that pain and discomfort so that she was accepting of that medication. So we were lucky enough to do sort of a sedative procedure where it's sort of a longer term medication gets put in their ears. So then the trainers can work what we call a desensitization and counter conditioning plan for handling and administering the ear meds, because it got to the point for Maple where she would just see the bottle and she would run to the other side of her kennel. She was so stressed and uncomfortable with that anticipation of the pain of people touching and handling her ears, to get her to the point where, she's maybe not the most willing, but that's our goal, is where she's consenting to, we have a consent cue. Usually it's a chin rest that we teach them, so that when they present that and we do it, and if they pull back or move from that spot, then that's our cue to stop what we're doing. So our team is working alongside Maple to get her comfortable with that. So if it is sort of a chronic ongoing issue for her, it won't be a daily stressor.
That is so sweet to hear about the chin cue. I did not know that. Yeah. That's awesome. And it really just goes to show the above and beyond treatment that our TLC animals receive. You know what? I'm just going to turn my camera off.
Yeah, she's just running around. Except now I feel like just move out of the way here. She's having a good time with the sticks.
Oh my gosh, she's so cute. All right, another question here, and we're almost running out the clock, but the next one we have up here is from Cassie Dixon, and she says, what types of issues do you deal with most in cats and dogs in the shelter setting?
Cassie Dixon, I know that name. She is one of our trainers. So yes, one of the things we deal with most with our cats are ones that are showing under social behaviors. So it depends on sort of their backstory, what their socialization status was, but we have had identified that it's what we would consider under. So they're not real, they're often scared, don't approach or interact with at the presence of a human. It's sort of a scary thing that they don't want to deal with, and they work to again sort of desensitize or counter condition that emotional response, and teach them that we're all right. We're okay to be around. And a lot of that involves some bribery with some food, depending. It all depends on what the animal is motivated by. We always find it easiest when it's food, but there are other ways too. We find a lot of success with some of these cats. The breakthrough is through play. Cats are very playful. They like to chase things. So, things on a string or things like that can really get them sort of thinking about that and using those sort of instincts, and kind of forget that we're also there and a presence. So a lot of the time they are dealing with our under social cats, or our shy or fearful cats. They also spend some time with cats that are high energy, and that's where some of that trick training or harness training comes in. And then we walk them through the shelter or and give them a bit of exercise. What else? We try, again, this is more of a collaborative case with our medical team. If there's any litter box issues, trying to identify that. And then if there is no medical component to it, looking at interventions and monitoring what types of, maybe it's a type of litter, it's the location, what can we do so that the cat starts using the litter box. So I think that one's always enjoyable. And then for our dogs, a lot of what we see in this shelter is, I mean, it kind of varies. I feel like I'm stressed by this answer and I should know it so well. But a lot of reactivity, whether that's in their kennel towards unfamiliar people, it's on leash, and we're trying to identify where that's coming from, and alleviating that. So sometimes it is that they're just frustrated, and they just want to no longer be tethered to a leash and they would really like to just like play with those other dogs. Sometimes it's coming from a more fear-based, where we take a different approach, and try and change their emotional response to seeing another dog to make it positive. Sometimes we see dogs that are really shut down. You know, the shelter, like I said, loud, noisy, weird smells, weird new people. So it's getting them comfortable and confident in that environment. Sometimes it's addressing the actual location or what's in their housing, where they're walking, what time they're walking, and just trying to create that positive association with them. Then there are things like jumpy, mouthy behaviors. There are a lot of dogs that, you know, are over aroused or frustrated to be in the shelter. And then they get out for their kennel and, you know, they don't have maybe the most polite skills. So we're trying to teach them those foundations to set them and their future family up for success. I feel like that's a good sort of synopsis of what we're doing. It's all sorts of things. And then, I have to say this in general. Socialization. We're always really pushing that. Sometimes we don't get the opportunity to do it ourselves, but ensuring that those high priority cases get that interaction when our animals are in that critical socialization period to be working through that.
That's awesome, Melissa. Thank you so much for such valuable information. I think that takes us to the end of our segment here. So guys, thank you all for joining us, for adding your questions and your support. If you liked any of the dogs that were in today's segment, head on over to our website, torontohumanesociety.com, where we can find lots more information on each of their individual cases. That wraps us up. Again, if you guys like what you saw, if you want to meet more of what makes Toronto Humane Society so great and the team behind all of our hard work, definitely comment below so we can set up some more of these so you guys can meet some more of our wider team. Melissa, thank you again for your amazing information. You are awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, you were so great. Okay, we will see you guys all very soon. For those who missed it, it's going to live on our Facebook and our YouTube page for later viewing and sharing. All right, have a good weekend, everyone. We will see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.